Okay, I should be back online. Yeah, YouTube shows green. It's okay. Twitch will follow. The food interruption, or rather enjoyment. Let's get back to making our button in Blender disabled or enabled. I think that poll function that I came across from earlier has some merit. Funny thing is, I don't recall. Did I type poll here? I think, or maybe I did not. Interesting. Anyway, this is the one. Is test if the operator can be called or not. So I think in this case, called or not means that whether it's enabled or disabled. So can you call it or not? If it's disabled, you cannot call it. When you execute the operator, this is what this poll is basically like you're polling. It's like the process in Godot. So for this buttons, in this assignment button, this is where we are going to write it. I think the fact that I did not see poll here, but the way they did it was class methods. And if you do it that way, then poll is available. So this part that we are writing here right now, whether there are selected objects or not, is gonna go in the polling. And this is gonna go in here. Let's delete this part too. Because here we were conditionally adding the button to the moving it, but let's assume it's always there, but disable it whether there are objects or not, and there is no if case. This is actually whether there are selected objects. Let's see if this is going to work. Back in Blender, install the plugin again. Here, refresh, reload the scripts. Assignment is disabled. It kind of looks clickable, but actually, yeah, I know for sure it's not doing anything because it should have done this. Going to output all the nodes. Doing that yet. But when an object is selected, then this button is enabled. So when you click it, then you get to see the available node groups. So that's cool. We are one step closer to making our Blender to Godot awesome pipeline. Next thing is, what does this button do besides outputting silly variables in the panel here? When an object is selected, we would like to add custom properties to its you could add custom properties to different, let's say, Blender objects. Material could be added custom property, but this is actually the object properties in the sense that this is the object you select in Blender and it shows object node. That's what I'm talking about. I am good. Casey, Mr. Banana, how are you today? So I'm thinking of next thing is this object also has an underlying mesh. which is represented here as, sorry, this as its data. So like you could have this object's data properties. There is just the object properties, and then this selected object's material properties. So different groups here could have custom properties assigned. Cool. I'm glad you're doing well. So we are investigating custom property assignment to the proper group here. The some things here are just modifier, but it's like, of course, this selected objects modifier. This won't have custom. These are just modifiers added to the object. But these get exported from Blender to Godot. That's what we are going to use to do some fancy work here. Now, when we select this, base data context is object. Now we need to simulate the click of this button within here. If you could output to the info screen the selected object's name, at least trellis 1001, that would be a good start. Then I can investigate how to access different properties here. Most basic thing is name. Let's pretend we always have one object. Later we will maybe do this assignment for multiple objects. Selected. Let's just pretend we have the very first one. You have name, you do have name. Start with the basics. Blender, this guy, install here, Q, reload scripts, disabled. So when we click this area, then this, see trellis 1004. Now this is actually showing the object. Let's actually this is 004. This, what have we selected? Needed selected objects, because everything is actually nested in here. Let's move this down a bit. This is the a little bit confused. This doesn't make any. I know that Blender puts these things in collections here just for visual representation, but essentially this trellis model, sorry, trellis node is holding all the. Let's do this. How many of you gonna give an error? str install this view built-in method count of list. It's a method. I'm just referencing the function. I'm not calling the function. Do this. Picked out because it takes exactly one argument. I would count take an argument. I contact selectable object value. Return number of occurrences of. Okay, this count is not the same count that I think. I thought selectable objects would actually. This one maybe. List. Wasn't it size? Did I? The length. Get the length of something. Oh, okay. Yes. Get rusty in Python. So get the length of the objects and then install. Actually, okay, 24. This is the problem. I believe no matter what object I select here, I'm going to put 24 because everything is actually one object. So even though I'm selecting this, thinks of this one as the uppermost item object. So consider these as sort of child sub-objects. So object is this. So, and because there are 24 objects, when we get the first one, it was just possibly one out of these four and it happened 004. So we need to get exactly this one because each one of these has its own object here. Each one can be assigned property here. Let's say between this one and this one, we actually have property value, default value. This actually has bar value. This one has prop value or property. So we cannot just assign something to their parent. So oh boy, selectable objects. That's dumb. Okay, let's try with the selectable object, selected objects then. Going to consider this one as one selected object or again the parent relationship. This we will rule that out. Done. You Hit the button. It said 1, which is good news. It's only this. Now we can start. Let's keep that str there just in case. Don't need the length. Selected objects 0.name is what we're in. Should work. Um, do this. We have one object selected. Hit it. This 1077. Brilliant. Click this. Oh, 1. Perfect. And it should be 1, 2. Click it. Now, custom properties. How can we add custom? Selected. I don't want to keep hiding this. Selected object actually gives the, okay, stands the data. Asset data. Is this what I think it is? What if we just output asset data, whatever it is, and we pretend for this one we have prop1. Okay, actually funny value like that. Install sources. Click my float none. Asset data is definitely none. Let's investigate animation data. It could be props. Things not data worth investigating. If I do control space, I think VS Code lists. What was it? There was a way to switch between properties and methods. Anyway, none of this data. Why do we have list here now? Let's check the data. This data might be the driver business. Property hidden. Property set items. Keys. Keys. Let's get the data. First things first. My float, it's a struct cube, it's the underlying data. Is this data? So it actually gets this. We get this objects transform relation. It should output this. If it does, closer to, because there is no other location. I think this was called rotation Oilers, which was, yeah, let's get the rotation Euler, and then actually it's all gonna give 0. Let's actually stick with location. Here this, it's vector minus 2921. How can we access? Now we are kind of in this space. That's custom properties. I think the way we got this property was like this. Was like this. You perhaps stick it under data like this. What should you get here? The fact that you are bitching about this. Type. It's not how you get e prop unterminated expression in f string missing close brace open close. Let's call it value. It's let's test this. It's none. Prop is because this data is actually still referring to the underlying data. So what if I actually did this here? Have get method, you should by yourself. I wish there is a faster way to do this whole work. If any one of the viewers knows a way to do that, would speed things up. Here is the value. Brilliant. Got it. That's it. Set this to 0.53. Hit this. We are going to get a floating point. This is in essence is this. We are in good shape. Instead of getting it, selected objects 0, set. That's where the problem. The property. This property set. What property? property onset. I feel like it's so close. We are able to get the property we manually assigned. We are trying to assign here this value and arbitrarily select objects and assign them node. What happens when we click this data block? That data block is not necessarily this data block. I think they wrote that everywhere it's the same thing. Because when you read it, there was a difference between this objects just get property versus that data get property. That data is the mesh information. Pretty much the same way you could get the material, active materials get. But if we assigned a custom property for that, you would actually get a separate. Does it treat it as everything data here? Set. There is no. Set attribute. Really? You reload. Okay. Let's turn this on. We are expecting to see it here. Click. Ooh. Object has no attribute. First, there is no attribute. Because oh, okay. It expects say if I actually set this to location, then it would have actually assigned this value. Location. It doesn't recognize. That's the one we are trying to. So set attribute assumes that the attribute exists. How do you create the attribute? Well, I would assume setting the attribute should create it if they're section doesn't say anything. Self name. This thing has an attribute problem. Attitude problem. Such thing is set. The data. Can you do something like this? Say, haven't tried it. Failed, right? A similar pattern like this kind of worked at some point. Here with this, where was it? Well, I disabled. There was an add-on that was actually. It's sometime somewhere in the first stream today. We saved this, right? I don't think this will work because it's already giving me error in VS Code. Yeah, it actually kind of killed itself. It's not even data that when you do it like this, what is the difference between this line and the line below? It's just X. Never say never. Mesh object has no attribute. Custom property. Time to turn on some music and also search here. Custom. Search, please. Props. Check this one out. So just like this, you assign something. Test the property is there. Material 0, custom flow. So in other words, selected object 0, just getting the value. So selected object 0 dot this is simply this. So we should see this in here soon. You reload on, do this, and of course it's going to say, what are you talking about? BPI types material. Operator example. Context object props. Context object location X can set properties dynamically. BPI context selected object. Context. I think this context is what I'm trying to do. Turn this into props. Props my float. Props is but this is storing like this, there's a button here and he's assigning these two variables. That's not exactly what we want. Scene. Okay. It's actually a scene variable. Context dot object setter. Text scene. Still not about the object. Just gotcha stuff. Creating stuff. Asset metadata. This name came up. RNA. Inherited functions. S pointer, driver add, get. Asset data. Mesh operators. But we are not. I would like to think that I'm not actually. Let's see if light can have a custom property here in its object properties. Camera and light, which is empty. Here is sun. So sun has its own object properties. Space data context object. So it's labeled as object properties, but how can we access properties? Keep reading. Could be considered as a node. The node could actually, okay, this, and these names make me think that they are essentially finding what we are seeing here based on what I've seen in previous tutorials. So if a node could actually have properties such as this, could one of these properties be labeled as custom properties? Inputs, label, location, row options. Guys, seriously, it's going all the way alphabetical, and then here you go back to letter C. Object operators, object modifiers, object operators, add. Nope, none of this. Assign property defaults. Assign the current values of custom properties as their defaults. Is this it? Assign the current values of custom properties. So custom properties may have current values. So this function makes those current values as those properties default values. Which can only mean this page will have, and it's a long page, may have set property, something like that. Disappointed. BL operators. Okay. Object is file. Object assign property default. Full property. Here's some Prop in objects RNA properties. This might get subclass. RNA type ident. Context active object. Why can't I get that? Context active object in poll. I think it's a different version of Blender. It's, um, that thing doesn't exist. BL operators. What is this actually? Fusion B browse master. So this should be the latest one, no? Back to work. So apparently on the official Blender page, I found something that could be useful. Didn't make any sense. Now this part might be helpful for us because currently we are checking if there are selected objects. but not every object has to be in edit in object mode. Sometimes it will be in edit mode. So we might have to check if the object is in. This I said rang a bell. This RNA. Right now, it's actually accessing the BL properties this way, but when I type that, I'm seeing a different RNA thing. Probably giving me error somewhere here, but context doesn't have that. And also, they actually have this context active object thing, which I don't see. Also very simple. Let's pretend this exists. So now when you have this, stuff is making less sense. Even if we get the object by doing this, selected objects, okay? I think this still didn't have that RNA thing. It only had this. It gets the subclass. Now, I believe if we type prop here, it might get something. Prop exists in the object modifiers. Panel, pose, preferences, render settings, stuff we don't need. Types, UI layout. The custom properties gives you this list. Blender, custom properties, Python. Custom properties are a way to store your, which is this shit. It's getting mad here. How do you access this in code? All data blocks types. Did, yes, we do this. Can we do this in the code though? Can be accessed in a similar way to dictionaries. The constraints that keys can only be strings and values can only be strings, numbers, arrays, or okay, this part is no problem. In a similar way to dictionaries. If some prop in selected object property found, the scenes the scene could actually have, let me see a scene. Here's a scene, right? Scene could also have its own. Indeed, we actually do have. We don't need this, but we are interested in the object itself. Let's get back to this. Okay, let's try to access it. Back to stream. Text discussion. context object. I think they mislabeled as active object in the other situations, but it's actually object. I think this is the disconnect here. BPI context and context. And this is because I don't know much about importing stuff yet. I think that's why it's happening. Anyway, we'll just type BPI for now. I'm okay with that. Actually, this is fine. So, what they are saying essentially is 6 o'clock. I think we'll go another half an hour, and then I have to get ready for a meetup. Um, where is it? So then you basically have the data property of any data block. So an objects, you do it like this. So object, this is an object. You do it like this. My own property is equal on stuff. Okay, this should work. So when I do this, hopefully, not only will I read the value in the panel, I'm also going to set this property in the right place. Install here, reload. So I'm expecting to see here my own property when I click this. Able to read this, that's good news, but I see selected object. When we do this data, as you know, oh, this motherfucker did not refresh it before. Okay, I'm mad. This worked. This is brilliant. Okay. So instead of string my own shit, this is basically saying what can be assigned. It could be not that these properties can only be assigned basic Python types. It could be a dictionary. Well, in this case, it is actually an array because that's the way we have is this. Let's see if this is going. I think it should because it's about time some stuff worked. Click this. Okay, it says 4 items. The fact that it's here is good news. It puts this here. It does not let us select, but we are going to assign one anyway, not just the whole. So whichever one is selected is going to be the execution. So that's That's what that guy was doing. My tool. Now we have to do it. So my tool, but you don't get my tool. Get it from API types scenes scene my tool. Okay. I think here he signed my tool, my tool, scene my tool. Okay. From here, I'll go back to his tutorial. Execute scene.myTool, context.scene. Something like this has to be done. Execute. Then with my tool, we need to get the enum, which is node group. And whichever one is selected is what we need to get. So basically, if it's OP, here, whichever one is selected is going to give us. This now has to be. I'm thinking. This is garbage. Selected objects part of value is. This is going to be commented out. This too, maybe. Never going to be needed. Install resources. This. View reload scripts. This now should display growing spots. Awesome. It's a string. It's actually good. When we do leaf and assign, it should display leaf. So that's actually good enough. Okay, I was trying to assign an array of strings. Dictionary can be assigned to. Only string keys are supported. So if I turn my node group into a dictionary instead of an array, where is it? I think you don't do it like this with the sets, right? You do sorted, iterable, and this actually returns. So instead, you do it like this. So then node groups is still going to be part of this, but instead of this, we may get away with this node groups, and we'll see. We'll see. There is something interesting waiting to happen there. Change it to animal spot, or even better, growing spot. Still 4 items. Do this. But the fact that the other parts still works, this part, good. Leaf, leaf. It's still string. It's okay. We could be fine with that. That's say stem. This. It's a bit slow, but it's actually good. I don't care. It's actually a string, so that makes sense. When it's I'm going to make this node groups, and I think I do remember something about selecting the default value, which is a different topic, and which is something that led us to this whole discovery. We are going to save 4 items. That's good. So here's the default value. So right now we have growing spot, but it's as if it did not actually select something, and which is this part, this default part. Say, what if leaf is the default part? And do you actually type it like this or this? Actually fixes. Only string keys are supported. Values must be basic types too. Groups new my test group. Group game settings. That's More? Sure. Fifteen more minutes to the stream cutoff, and then around 7 meetup. So if you guys want to hang out with the Godot community tonight, I'm hosting more like organizing Godot Toronto. So we will discover how to work with tiles in Godot with the help of a program called Tiled. So you may want to check us out tonight. And if you find this stream later, there is Godot Toronto meetup group. We don't physically meet anymore. So we hang out on Discord. So we'll probably continue that practice after things open up. We may have physical events, but we will also have digital events as well. So it's never too late if you discover this. Should you be listening to the stream, let's say. So we have very, very good news here. If, only if, this could also, I think this is enough. Let's not push it. I was hoping that I would have something like this here. Because why can't we have good things, you know? Object. The fact that enum property. Let's read about this bad boy. I think we are under props or items, sequence of string tuples or a function. Identifier, name, description. That's what we already have. The first three elements of the tuples are mandatory. We are currently passing the description and name, description. We already have that. Default. The default value for this enum, a string from the identifiers used. The string from the identifiers used in items. Identifiers default string. User must have a default thing. Default. And that is going to be coming from node groups, the first item. Kind of does something. We don't really see the default hard coded too. The fact that it's still showing this is worrisome. Let's do it this way. Let's click OK and then remove this. And then we do this. It's going to put this here. This is empty. That's kind of good. It has been saved. Good. I don't think it actually picked it up. Let's try the hard code way for the point. Let's remove you. Let's add growing spot assignment. The fact that default value is not coming here is options. I emailed them to you, both sick kids and W. Sign defaults. Sign self. Sign such thing as. Okay, I'm kind of calling this success. Let's wrap it up in the next several minutes and then sign off. Rest a bit, get ready for the meetup. I need to set things up. So the name of this is going to be node group. And here, whichever one is selected is, and how do we know which one is selected? We know that from my tool, my enum. So whichever one is selected is probably going to give us my tool. This is part of my tool, which is the properties. And here actually there are a lot of other things we can do. Like when you access something, get something maybe. Let's not investigate. This might be enough. And if anything, maybe we'll need another button to unassign the node group in case we actually have an accidental click. Because the last thing we may want to do is click multiple objects, add this, and then go into each one later to remove it. So growing spot, assign, and this should now say growing spot. Node group, growing spot. Beautiful. So remove all this, done. Assign group. Um, context scene. Okay, selected objects. This is going to be actually for selected objects. This. Okay. This is actually what we objects group is self-report. Don't report yourself. We need another class. This class is going to be called node group remover. What an original name. Remove node group remover. From here, we are. Is it essentially doing this? It might just be that and not used. Add-on not group thingy is here. Um, you create another row. Signer remover. This. Okay, we'll look into how to put them in a column or not. Install resources. Hit Q. Here it is. Both are disabled. When I select this, if I do remove node group, it's going to remove this hopefully. The fact that it did not is concerning. Property not found in group. I think the first time I hit it, it did something. So let's change this to leave sign. Okay, leave. I think it did remove it, but there is delay because when I do remove it. Okay, there is delay. Because this problem existed before. When I do something here, I have to go and click somewhere else, like, or interact with this area, sort of like this. There's a bit of delay. When I do this, it actually does it, but I have to click or come here to kind of render this area. This does. Let's assign it to multiple objects. These two poles. Assign node group. It doesn't have it. Does have it. It does have it. Beautiful. Remove only from one. This still has it. Let's change it to animal spot. Assign animal spot. This still shouldn't have it. To stem. Beautiful. Now this one is animal spot. This one is stem. Remove from both. Absolutely beautiful. Done. 1 minute to spare. Okay, so I think let me see. Tomorrow is marketing day. I have some other business topics to take care of. I may be able to stream, but it's going to be mainly for marketing. If I do any streaming at all. But this is it for now. This custom property assignment will help us develop the rest of this custom plugin. So I will be able to explain what I'm doing in more detail in the next stream. But for now, we are working heavily on writing a decent pipeline to import hundreds of assets. So that's all for tonight, and see you later.